Yeah.
So I mean, we're here to talk about the main event, of course.
Yes.
So, I mean, what's the easy breakdown? Just pick the guy from Lafayette and you're good.
It's not that simple. I think you know what's crazy about this whole thing is that you get here last weekend and you look forward to the ABC show, and that's kind of all you're focused on. And obviously, you think about Conor McGregor fighting again, but there's an obligation to Max Holloway and Calvin Kattar and all the other fighters, right? And then beginning of the week, I was gonna work the desk on Wednesday, but then Monday they were like, "Hey, you think you can call the fights?" I'm like, "Yeah, sure. I'll start preparing and try to do it justice." So then you kind of have to not spend as much time thinking about what's happening on Saturday because you got to get through Michael Chiesa and Neil Magny and pay them the proper respect. And so now, as I literally, I'm just waking up. Like, I mean, I called the fights yesterday. I woke up yesterday morning because, again, I'm trying to adjust the sleep schedule. Uh, and then I was up all the way until 9 o'clock this morning because Ariel and I did a national radio show on ESPN Radio. And so I was up for 26 straight hours. Got like 5 hours now. So now I can turn and look at what's happened this week, and obviously it's the one that we all showed up here for, when you really are true to yourself. I think this is a story or a fight that has just a lot of different questions. I don't know if we've seen Conor as motivated or as focused as he has seemed for a very long time. And Dustin Poirier, you wonder if the experiences he's had since that first fight have prepared him for taking that challenge on again. So it's a very difficult fight to call because there are so many unknowns. Because for as good as we know Dustin Poirier has gotten, has he closed the gap? Now, there's some mental things that Dustin can rely on to allow him to feel more propped up. He got knocked out. He didn't get beat over an extended period of time. It was a very close fight. You can call back on that. Like, hey, I got caught with a shot. I don't know what would have happened over the course of 15 minutes. You get caught with a shot again like that, then you know that guy just knows how to find that spot on you. So, I don't know. I really don't know.
Well, that's what's interesting, right? Because you brought up the mental aspect of it. That seems to be such a big discussion point for everybody going in, is the mental side of it.
Big.
At this level of the sport, I mean, how much that does play? We're talking about two of the greatest athletes in the world, right?
Yeah.
Two of the greatest fighters on the planet. How much of that mental side of it really does factor in?
It's insane. I think, thinking back to your fight career and the positions that I was in as a guy that fought a guy twice after winning, and then fighting the guy twice or a third time after losing. When you lose to a guy, especially a guy that you had, even though now it may seem a little bit less nasty, it was nasty initially, and you had that with him, you're never more motivated than the time you get a chance to fight him again. So if that stays the way it has been, especially in my case, Dustin Poirier will feel and be more prepared than he ever could have imagined come Saturday night. But it is very important for him, and I've said this on multiple occasions. The mental aspect of this game for Dustin is probably the biggest factor because he has to figure out how to look past what happened the first time. Because all week, or for the last month, right? Because it's Conor McGregor, so the promotion is much longer. Right, people pick it up faster. Dustin has seen himself get knocked out. I mean, 1,000 times, right? In every promotion, there's Dustin getting knocked out. Every time Conor speaks, he talks about knocking him out, right? It's just a constant reminder. So you got to get over that as an athlete. Yeah, sure, you knocked me out the first time, but can you do it again? So I think this game is so important inside the game. Before we get to the fight, how does Dustin prepare himself up top to approach Saturday? It's fascinating.
And want to ask you, it's kind of the flip side. It's kind of a mental thing, too. I want to ask you about the fighting environment itself, right? I mean, we think about Conor McGregor, spotlights on, crowds, thousands. He seems to respond to that, right?
Yeah.
And you seem like the perfect guy to ask because you fought in those arenas, but you've also fought in the Apex, right? And I know there's some fans there, but for a guy that seems to, shine in the spotlight, is there a chance that Conor might not be as sharp or as ready or as he normally is when he's under the spotlights of thousands?
You know what's crazy is that we've had, on multiple occasions now, that we've started to fight in front of no fans, you have seen differences in performances. Tony Ferguson has not competed as well without fans. But Justin Gaethje had the performance of his life because the fans weren't there to rile him up and make him go crazy and put himself in danger. So you don't know. I mean, everybody spars in an empty room. So you try to call on those experiences to say that's how I'm going to fight. But it's much different once you walk in there. Listen, you hit that curtain for years, and there are thousands of people going absolutely crazy. When I walked out into the Apex, it was only Halle Berry screaming, which is a good fan to have. Yeah, it's a good fan to have. It was the only person in there screaming, right? So it is a difference. But once you get in that octagon, it's only fighting, and it's all we all know.
Yeah. Last thing for me, we've talked about all kinds of intangibles. Now let's talk about just inside. Simple breakdown. Is it just as easy as Conor early, Dustin late?
It's a great fight. It seems to be what happens on the surface. Like if Dustin can carry this fight into the later rounds, he has, as of late, been able to get better as the fight has progressed, right? Dustin wasn't always a guy that got better in the fourth and the fifth and the third. Korean Zombie overwhelmed him early in his career when he was trying to knock everybody out very fast. But we saw in the Dan Hooker fight, we saw in the Max Holloway fight, that Dustin has become a guy that does fight better as the fight goes along and has an ability to rebuild himself after things go sideways. That was one of his biggest faults early in his career, was when it went bad, it went really bad for Dustin, right? It was over. You saw the doubt in his face. You saw his body, his mannerisms. Everything showed you that Dustin was in trouble. Not anymore. He gets off the bench and he tells Dan Hooker, don't look at the clock now. We got a long time to continue to fight. That's the Dustin Poirier of today opposed to who he was back then. Conor McGregor, people kind of say he gets tired. And we've seen him fatigue. We've seen him fatigue against Nate Diaz, but that was a different fight than what he was preparing for. We saw him fatigue in fights. But in the second Nate Diaz fight, Nate Diaz started to build in the third round. And in the fourth round, when the fight got really close, in the fifth round, Conor McGregor, after being hurt, after being pressed against the side of the octagon and getting beaten, came back and won the fifth round, and it ultimately won him the fight. Right? That shows development for Conor as a fighter. Conor fought 10 rounds with Floyd Mayweather. That's crazy. And then he went 4 rounds with Khabib Nurmagomedov. And who doesn't get fatigued going 4 rounds with Khabib, and Khabib's having the fight that he wants to have? So it seems like that on the surface. But again, there are just so many little details to the fight that we have to see how it starts to play out.
Tanya, if you could pick one weapon from either guy that the other one should look out for, what is it? So what does Dustin need to look out for? What does Conor need to look out for?
You know what's crazy? Everybody would think that if you're Dustin Poirier, you got to avoid the left hand, right? That's Conor's best weapon. But that's not necessarily it. It's all the traps that he sets before he throws the left hand. That's why you always see Conor do some crazy stuff at the very start of the fight. It's always a spinning heel kick, a spinning back kick. It's always something to put you unaware. So I think if I'm Dustin Poirier, it's the unexpected that I'm really on a high alert for early in the fight. A jumping knee, a spinning heel kick, a spinning back kick. Something that's going to hit you and wheel you into the range of the left hand. Because it's not just Conor going out and throwing the left hand. Eddie Alvarez, it was fade back, left hand, drop him. Fade back, left hand, drop him. Okay, now I've got Eddie Alvarez really scared to go forward. When he does attack, he's going to attack with no confidence. And now I'm going to go left hand. I'm going to throw a hook. And I'm going to really put him out, right? It's all those little tricks that Conor does before he lets go of his ultimate weapon that I believe Dustin should be very aware of. And for Conor, again, it's Dustin Poirier's boxing. This dude has another good left hand, but that's not the shot. The shot from Dustin Poirier is the right hook. and it's off of a check too. So when Conor enters, Dustin throws that check right hook, and it's nasty because ultimately that's his power hand. He's a right-handed guy. He just fights with it in front, right? So for him to have developed the power that he has in the left hand, fantastic. But it's that right hand. And that hook that Dustin throws, he hit Max Holloway with so many hooks. And he hit Dan Hooker with so many hooks every time they were in close because this hand's always up. Dustin's not like throwing that hook and this hand's down at his waist. It's right here, right in place. And he's throwing that check hook and he's landing beautifully.
You mentioned the mentality that Dustin needs to have to, put that first knockout in his mind. Is there something to be said that the first punch that Conor lands could be the most defining one of the fight? Because if he hits Dustin with power, Dustin might go right back and think, oh, I remember this, and sort of fail. Do you think a lot is made on that first contact?
I talked to Dustin in Vegas, and he's very aware. Dustin's an honest guy. He won't lie to you. He tells you he's very powerful. He's fast. He tells you he's very aware of the positives, the advantages that Conor has. I kind of didn't expect that when I first asked him, but he told me. He was like, hey, he's a very powerful guy, and he's told you guys that. He's very fast, and he's accurate. So I don't think he's going to be jarred by anything anymore just because he has felt it. He understands what the consequences are to getting hit with it. I just think he has to be on high alert as the fight starts because Conor Fresh can put just about anybody out.
Is that what makes this so tricky? Because obviously, Conor has that power early, and Dustin needs to be careful of it. But if he wants to make him fade and make the fight go to his advantage, he also needs to make him work.
Well, he's got to earn some respect, right? You got to earn respect in the fight. If a guy fears nothing, then you're in trouble. I mean, we saw that. I talk about some of these fights, and Khabib comes up, right? Because Khabib went at Justin Gaethje like there was just no fear. And then I saw something yesterday where he said he's never been kicked or punched harder in his life. Could you tell? I mean, really, he just kept going after him. He just showed no fear. And I think in the fight with Mcgregor, he didn't look afraid either. And I think it's something to be said about posturing, right? Because even if those are affecting you, you never let it show. And I think Dustin needs to earn some respect, and he's got to have a good poker face because he's going to get hit. And there have been times where we've seen him get hit, and you can almost tell that he got hit. He cannot put on this weekend. He has to hide it. He has to show Conor that it's not affecting him when he is landing those shots.
Is there something to be said as well that we're reaching a stage now where the victory for some guys is almost just getting the Conor fight?
What is? It elevates you.
Yeah, it's almost like, I got the fight, I got the cash, whatever, and then it's hard to motivate yourself to actually compete.
Well, I think that, the guys that Conor, the ones that he's fighting, no one thinks I got the Conor fight and I'm good. Those guys are way too good. Because ultimately he's fighting the best of the best. Now, the Cowboy Cerrone fight, I know Stephen A. Smith and a lot of other people said he didn't fight. He kind of gave up. And he got railed, Stephen A. It was bad, but the reality is, like, Donald Cerrone of the old would never have lost to Conor McGregor in 42 seconds. There was a time when Donald Cerrone said he was too small to fight lightweight. He beat him up at welterweight, right? So even for a long-time veteran like Cowboy, the appeal of Conor McGregor got to him. But the guys that he's fighting now, you got to be talking about Cowboy. I got the fight, and that's, like, I'm here, right? You got to be talking about Cowboy because I don't think the guys that he's going to fight going forward will ever feel like, oh, the victory's already had. I'm in here with Conor McGregor. Because when you're in there with Conor, he's trying to beat you. He ain't trying to let you win, right? He's trying to knock your head off. So Dustin Poirier doesn't feel happy to be here. I saw Ally Quinta say something like that a while back. Dustin's showing too much respect. But, man, that kid's from Lafayette, Louisiana, and he is a dog. And he's going to fight with all of his heart. He might not win all the time. But you watch Dustin fight. He's a nasty son of a gun, dude. And he wants to fight, and he shows up. And he'll fight Conor to the best of his ability. I don't know if he'll win, but he will fight him hard. He'll fight him hard as he can.
How could size potentially play in here? I mean, Hooker said that he heard before he fought Dustin that he was 183 when he got in the cage.
Dustin's big. You look at his back and his arms. He's got really long arms. That's another thing about McGregor that people don't realize. He's got some super long arms. For a little guy, because make no mistake about it, Conor's a little guy, right? He's short, he's kind of skinny, but he's so long. He's got super long arms, and he's fast. But Dustin's big. Like, Dustin doesn't seem to have as much explosiveness. He's not going to go pap, pap. But it's like kind of like bang, bang, bang. Everything just kind of lands with a thud, right? From the jab to the left hand to the hook. Everything just kind of lands with a thud from Dustin Poirier. And when he walks in the octagon, you look at his back and his arms and his shoulders. It was never more evident than when him and Max Holloway got in there. We all thought Max Holloway could fight at lightweight. And then when you saw them next to each other, you were like, wow, Max is too small to fight at lightweight. It's because Dustin's a big lightweight that at some point I feel is going to be fighting up at welterweight.
Daniel, there's 4 great lightweights on this card on Saturday night, but we're all still talking about Khabib. You know the guy well. What's it going to take? What do they have to show him for him to come back?
You know, I think for Khabib it's going to be something competitively. You know, I think when his financial position is so different. You know, he's not, I don't think it's just going to be money anymore. You know, I think when you get to a certain point in your life, money's great, obviously. But, I mean, he lives in the mountains in Dagestan, Russia. You know, I mean, how much do you really need? You know what I'm saying? I'm figuring you don't need all that much. And he's a smart guy. He's got a lot of different ventures outside of the octagon. So something competitive that goes, wow, this makes me want to put everything else aside and get back to work at preparing for a fight, because that's what it takes, right? You don't just go to a fight. Everything else is on hold as you prepare. And for a guy like Khabib, who has so many irons in the fire, it will take something that excites him in order to get him back in training camp.
He has very strong family ties. Obviously, he promised his brother that he wouldn't go into the octagon again without his father being there. Do you think that, you know, he'll go back to his mom now and say, Mom, I want to do this once more? Or do you think he's going to leave it at that?
I don't know. I mean, you know, we were at dinner the other day, and he actually asked me. He goes, "What do you want? Like, what do you want me to do?" And I was like, "I don't really care. Like, I really don't care." He was like, "Come on, say this. Tell me." I was like, Khabib, I don't care. I go, "You fight, I'll support you. I'll help you prepare as we always have." I go, "If you don't, we'll still talk. We'll still see each other when Umar fights and Islam fights and everybody else. It just really doesn't matter to me. I have no vested interest in him fighting or if he doesn't fight." Granted, as a fan of the sport, you want him to fight. As the organization, they should want him to fight. Dana should want him to fight. What Dana's doing is what he should be doing as a promoter. They should want Khabib Nurmagomedov in the octagon. But for me, personally, as a friend, I really don't care. And I guess I don't know if he thought that was going to be the answer, because he was telling me, no, tell me. As a fan, as a fan, people want you to fight. But ultimately, it's your decision. Like, I gain nothing. No money. He ain't going to pay me. I mean, for all the wrestling practices, he's giving me not one red cent. So it's like, ultimately, I ain't getting no money out of this. I get to watch my buddy do something that I know he loves to do. He loves to compete, and he's the best at it, right? And why? And when you look at the matchups, it's like, why would he not? Because he's so much better than everybody else. So it has to be something that makes him believe, oh, this is going to be much tougher for me. This is something that I'm going to have to really prepare for if I want to continue to dominate in the way that I do.
Look, we know the luster.
It's fine. Yeah, it's fine.
We know the luster that comes with the magical number 34, I think, because of his father and stuff. Do you think, obviously in the UFC's eyes, there's nothing bigger than Mcgregor and Khabib too?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
It would be again. But for Khabib, does he kind of look at that like, I don't really care about how big that fight would be? Or does he look at it and think, I want something special for 30? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense too. Hey, Conor did better than most, right? He was able to defend some takedowns. He was able to get back to his feet. He was able to stay standing the entire third round, I believe. And I think the judges might have gave him the round, right? So he did better than most. But again, it's going to take something very special for Khabib to say, to all the promises I made and everything else, this is what I want to do. And I don't know. I don't know if that's what it's going to take. Now, Conor looks like a world beater against Dustin. Maybe he goes, you know what? The guy's improved. And maybe, I really don't know what his mindset is. I mean, I was in the restaurant. Khabib was eating fish that's not on the menu because he's the man now. Like there was some fish flown in, and it was beautiful. He was just kind of living like the champ, talking about life and everything else. And I don't know what would make this young man decide to do it again. And I believe that the organization is doing what they need to do in order to try to get him back in there. But we'll have to see.
That seems like the most complicated part here, right? Like, what is the upside for Khabib in fighting Conor again?
Well, look, you want some Instagram followers? He got those after the first fight, right? Dude went from, then he have like 1.5 million to like 12 overnight, right? So like the rub to become an international superstar has already been achieved, right? And honestly, Khabib does not like Conor McGregor as Conor doesn't like Khabib. But there is no stressing how important it was for Khabib to share the octagon with him, because his profile internationally changed on the night he beat Conor McGregor. You cannot deny that. But ultimately, what can another fight with him do for him on that side of things and competitively? Once again, Conor fought him the best that he's been fought in a long time, right? So maybe Conor would show improvements that would tell Khabib, yes, I do want to fight him. I do want to go out there and do it again. But, there's a lot to it, and I think when it comes to family over in Dagestan, it means Umar Nurmagomedov. I went into the locker room last night, and I was wearing my suit, and I wear Kohan shoes. Just tennis shoes, nice tennis shoes. And Khabib goes, look at brother, you have nice suit, but you wear tennis shoes. Why? You can't understand. And he goes, look at me, and he takes out a picture, shows me nice shoes, Laura Piana shoes, whatever that is. I have no idea what that is. And they tell me Umar's going to buy me Laura Piana shoes after he wins. He goes, brother, you're a millionaire. Why don't you have nicer shoes? I go, bro, I choose to wear these shoes. You know what Umar texted me this morning? Brother, I will buy you these shoes, DC. I will call. I go, Umar. I go, if I want to buy these shoes, I could buy the shoes. I don't want, they're comfortable for me. I choose to wear them. But Umar Nurmagomedov, who just fought last night, first UFC fight, made an extra 50 grand, was going to spend his money to buy me $1,200 shoes. It's like, that's just how these guys are. They say something, and they try to stick to it. And I believe that's kind of where Khabib is with his mom.
What did you make of Umar's performance last night?
I thought he did fantastic. He hurt him with a beautiful front leg high kick. Rushed a little bit to try to chase down the finish, but as fighters, especially young fighters, you do that at times. But for him to show the improvements in the wrestling, the grappling, and the control, I think he's going to be a problem. Because if you remember, call back to 2012-13, Gleison Tibau, Khabib could not strike like this young man. So he has got an advantage in that sense, that he's much more well-rounded to start his UFC journey.
And you touched on Dustin getting Conor's respect early. How does he do that without leaving himself susceptible to the counter? You've seen before in the Eddie Alvarez fight when Eddie tried to come in a bit reckless.
You can't be reckless. He's too sharp. Connor's too sharp. He's a sniper, man. Dude's a legit sniper. His timing, his accuracy is so fantastic. Maybe kicking. Maybe kicking's going to be the thing. They're both southpaw, so you can throw some outside leg kicks. You can kind of throw some high kicks. Just kind of hit him without putting yourself in danger. Because guess what? High kicks don't get countered. Low kicks do, body kicks do, but high kicks, they can't counter that. You got to get your hands up and just defend. And I think Dustin has to give Conor things that he can only defend in order to gain some respect.
And other than the main event, what fight are you most looking forward to on the card?
I mean, come on, man. Chandler and Dan Hooker. Like, how does Chandler do? I mean, Michael Chandler's a savage. But Dan Hooker, man, we spoke to him on Monday, I believe, because I don't even know what day it is today, honestly. Dan Hooker is so comfortable. He was more open in the fighter meeting than I've ever seen him. I was there when he fought in Australia. He was very shut off. He was like he wasn't very open to talking about what he was going to do, because when you're in that fighter meeting, it's Monday. You fight Saturday. You never know where that information goes. You got to trust that the analysts or those 5 people in the room will keep that to themselves, which we do. He was much more open to believing that fact this week and as he's gone longer in his career than he was initially. And for Michael Chandler, this is a big spot for him. I always I kind of relate this to, I'm a WWE guy, right? Like, I love wrestling. I relate it to when the big signing from WCW, Ric Flair, was brought into the WWF and at the time, and instead of making him beat Hulk Hogan or the Ultimate Warrior, you throw him in the Royal Rumble, right? Michael Chandler was the backup fighter for the championship. Didn't get to fight in there. So guess what? you don't get to fight Conor McGregor, but we'll throw you on the card with him. And if you look good, he looks good, there's a chance you guys will come together, right? So there's ways to get guys in the place that you want them to get without having them in that spot right away. This is a big spot for Michael Chandler. He can be Ric Flair. And who doesn't want to be Ric Flair? I mean, I don't know. Ric Flair's like 70, and he's lived the most interesting life on the planet. You know, so.
They never made Flair Hogan.
They never did, but Flair sure won that Royal Rumble, and what did he walk away with? This is the greatest moment of my life, with a tear in my eye. You remember that? With a tear in my eye, this is the greatest moment of my life. When he was standing back there, Mr. Perfect, Bobby Heenan, WWF title. Still had the WCW title. Do you remember? He left the organization with the big belt. That was some gangster stuff right there.
Last question, guys.
Mhm.
So I wanted to ask you about that. You said before it's a timing thing, man. That commentating for WWE maybe like what's the deal with that at the moment?
I don't know, man. I'm loving what I'm doing so much right now. Like, I love calling fights. I love working for the UFC. This is where I want to be, and this is what I enjoy, But I've talked to the guys at WWE, and we'll see what happens. I mean, those guys are all great. The product is fantastic. It's just a fun time to be in television because I get to do what I love, and I get to watch some fantastic fights, and if I got to call wrestling matches, I would get to call some fun wrestling matches. Yeah, I get to do what I love, man. I'm a lucky, lucky human being. Not many people are set up in the way that I am after the fight career is done. I don't know if I'll never make as many zeros in one time as I did before. But, and again, that's another thing. Thank you to Conor McGregor, because the pay everything changed when he essentially changed the game on all fronts. But I enjoy what I do. I love it.
Thanks, guys.
All right, guys.